Welcome to the Thoughtful Leader podcast. My name is Ben Brearley. I'm a leadership coach and the founder of Thoughtful Leader. The Thoughtful Leader podcast is all about short, sharp leadership advice because thoughtful leadership is good leadership. Welcome to episode 232 of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. Now, we all know that autonomy is a key motivational factor. At least you would know that if you have listened to a few of my podcasts or read my articles before. So, incorporating autonomy into people's roles is quite important, but I find that some leaders struggle to do that and it's not always easy to do. So in this episode, I'm going to look at some ways to be able to successfully foster autonomy in your team, because it's not always as easy as it sounds. So let's get into the episode right now. Many leaders know that being able to foster autonomy in a team is a big deal, and as thoughtful leaders, I'm sure you are aware of this. Now, when you can provide autonomy for your people, you'll hopefully see greater motivation and proactivity and a more self-sufficient team. You'll have more time to do the job of leading rather than needing to closely support your people so often. Now, unfortunately, fostering autonomy is often no easy feat. It is a major motivating factor, but for it to work, your team members need to feel comfortable, and you need to feel comfortable letting go and providing that freedom too. Now, in this episode, I'm going to take a look at some factors that might be tripping you up in your efforts to foster autonomy. And there's a related podcast episode, number 215, about why autonomy matters for your people and how to provide it. That's a good companion episode to this one, so check that out. The link to that will be on the show notes page, thoughtfulleader.com/232. For many years, I was often frustrated by what people were doing in the workplace. I'd try to get the best out of them, but sometimes people would resist these efforts, and it just didn't seem logical to me. But that's because humans aren't really logical. We're also emotional creatures. I then started to understand more about motivation theory and organizational behavior and psychology, which gave me a little bit of a different perspective about how people operate. And over time, I came to realize a few things. Firstly, you never know exactly what's going on for somebody beneath the surface. Just by observing someone, you're only seeing a small part of the story. Second, people are a unique mix of all sorts of needs, emotions, fears, insecurities, goals, aspirations, genetics, past experiences, and cultural factors that shape their behavior. And for more on this topic, you can check out the iceberg model post, which is a really good one. That'll be on the show notes page as well. And the third thing I learned was that you'll almost never know the correct answer straight away. For me, it became a bit about experimentation and trial and error. I'd come up with some sort of hypothesis about what I thought was going on. Then I'd try to tweak something either in my behavior or the work environment to see how the team member responded to it. Sometimes it made no difference or the situation got worse. And other times it was like flicking a switch. People started to become more motivated and enthusiastic almost overnight. So you'll need patience and perseverance to try new things, but also realize that not everybody can be transformed to be perfect for every role or situation. There are times when it's just not a good fit. So I urge you to keep these points in mind for the rest of this episode while we look at the possible reasons why your efforts to foster autonomy aren't quite working yet. Okay, if people aren't being as proactive or independent as you'd like them to be, you're probably noticing a few things. You might notice that people are checking in with you too often when you don't feel that they should need to. You might also find that people are giving you all the details of what they're doing even though you don't feel you need them. Or you might find that your people are becoming frustrated or feeling unsupported because of your perceived hands-off approach. Now, there's lots of potential reasons why these sorts of behaviors might be happening, so let's take a quick look at them now. Then we'll see if there are some things you might be able to do about them. Now, the first thing I see crop up quite often is you can't foster autonomy because you haven't told people the plan. And as leaders, we are often developing strategies about what might improve the functioning of our teams. For an unmotivated team member, we think of actions we can take to help them become more engaged. Or for a team member lacking in confidence, we might try to create an environment where they can feel more self-assured. Sometimes, though, we keep the plans to ourselves. We make some adjustments, but we don't tell our people what we're trying to do. We just wait to see how they respond. But this approach doesn't work all the time. Team members may be accustomed to your normal way of operating, so when they see you're doing things differently, it can become confusing when they don't know what the plan is. So for example, let's say you're trying to improve autonomy and proactivity in your team. You want people to be a bit more self-sufficient and think for themselves. So you stop being prescriptive with your instructions and you give a general direction instead. Now, if your team are used to detailed instructions, they may continue to check in with you and ask for more detail because they think you've simply forgotten, or worse, they might think you've stopped caring. So instead, it might be helpful to have a conversation with your people to let them know what you're hoping to achieve, why it's important, and what you're going to do differently. Then they can understand the reasoning behind any potential change in behavior that they notice. Now, it may feel uncomfortable telling your people that you like them to be more proactive because you feel as if you're being critical, but really, you're trying to help them become more self-sufficient and confident and to take that step up to the next level. And on that note, there is a related article I'd get you to check out as well, Proactive versus Reactive Team Members, How to Make the Switch. You can see that on the show notes page. Now, the second thing to think about when you're trying to foster autonomy is that you've got to make sure your words match your behavior. It's very important to walk the talk as leaders. That is, we need to make sure our behavior aligns with our actions. And if it doesn't, you may find that you'll be perceived as lacking integrity, which can be a major problem when it comes to building trust. Now, when it comes to trying to foster autonomy in a team, we need to watch our body language and behavior closely. When we say we want to provide autonomy or have people become more proactive, our body language needs to say that too. It doesn't make sense to tell someone you trust them and then check in on them too frequently to see how things are progressing. And it doesn't make sense to tell someone you trust them and then give them advice on what they should be doing all the time. It also doesn't make sense to tell someone you trust them and then show nervous, twitchy body language when they tell you about an issue they're having. Now, your words are only part of the story. In fact, 55% of your meaning is communicated through body language, 38% through tone of voice, and only 7% communicated through the words that you use. So be sure to check your body language and tone instead of only focusing on the words that you are using. Otherwise, people may believe you don't really trust them or believe what you are saying, and then you might find that your people revert to their normal non-proactive behaviors, which you were trying to change in the first place. Because people are meaning-making machines, and we are very good at picking up on body language, even if we are not some sort of body language expert, because we naturally have evolved to be that way. So be careful the body language you are showing. Another thing to think about when you are trying to foster autonomy in your team is whether there's a payoff or a lack of consequences for the current behavior that you're seeing. So one reason that you may not be seeing the proactive behavior you are seeking may be because of a lack of compelling consequences or some sort of payoff for keeping the same behavior. A hallmark of proactive behavior is that people take responsibility for their own issues and work to fix them, and this is probably one of the reasons why you're looking to foster autonomy in the first place. Now, in some instances, I've seen leaders run in and fix mistakes for their team members instead of letting them take accountability, and for these team members, this can become a payoff for keeping the non-proactive behavior, because the team member may start to think, well, even when I make a mistake, someone will just come and fix it for me, so I don't really need to worry about it too much. Now, another common situation arises when there are really no consequences for passive, non-proactive behavior. The leader becomes frustrated, but not much else happens. So the question should be asked, why would the team member bother to make a change? You might want to foster autonomy and create a more proactive team, but do your people care and what's in it for them? Another thing that may be going on is that you're struggling to foster autonomy because of the hidden factors. Sometimes we do seemingly all the right things and put the right factors in place, but we still don't see the shift in behavior we're looking for. People continue to resist our attempts to foster autonomy and instead maintain their old behaviors. Now, consider the iceberg model that I referenced earlier in this episode. Are there hidden factors beneath the iceberg that are getting in the way of the team member making a change? And here are a few examples of the many, many possibilities that could be at play. So your team member, for example, could have something that's called a high power distance. That is, They might respect authority and are unlikely to push back or question people in leadership roles. This could be influenced by cultural factors, personality, or simply by previous experiences in the workplace. They may feel very uncomfortable making decisions for themselves. Instead, they wait for orders. Another thing that could be at play is that your team member might have had a bad boss in the past. They got in big trouble when they made a decision once, so they're not likely to want to do it again. And I've had team members that have come into my team having come from a situation where they were being led by a terrible sort of tyrant boss, and they started to treat me in the same way as if I was a tyrant. And it actually took quite a while to retrain them and to get them comfortable that I wasn't going to act in that way. And that was really stifling my attempts to try to give them autonomy. So that's a thing that can crop up as well. Because unfortunately, there are still bad bosses out there. Of course, they're not the thoughtful leaders listening to this podcast. All right, another thing at play might be team dynamics. Perhaps a team member is worried that if they are proactive, they may appear as if they're trying to get ahead at the expense of other team members, and it might just feel socially safer for them to keep doing what the rest of the team does. Now, obviously, there's almost an unlimited amount of factors that could be happening here. So instead of trying to guess them all, it might just be easier to try to get to the root of the problem by having a more direct conversation. So if a direct conversation is the answer to try to understand more about why you're struggling to see the proactivity or autonomy in your team member, it can be useful to tell them what you've observed, why you're concerned about it, and then get their perspective on the situation, because you might hear something you didn't quite expect. And after you've spent some time uncovering the potential roadblock, you can now work together to see if you can come up with a potential way forward. Now, it's not your job to be a therapist or counselor for your team, but sometimes having an open conversation about what you're seeing can help to solve the problem. Because trying to foster autonomy in a team can be a challenge. Your people have their own stuff, which may be preventing them from stepping up and taking ownership. And you have all your own baggage, which may be preventing you from letting go so easily too. Clear and open communication, persistence, and a bit of trial and error will go a long way to unlocking the proactive potential of your team. So hopefully you can see some of these factors today. Maybe you can check those out and see if they might be impacting your attempts to have a more proactive and autonomous team. And I'd love to get your thoughts on this. What challenges have you encountered when trying to give your team members more autonomy or improve proactivity? Let me and all the thoughtful leaders know in the comments on the show notes page, thoughtfulleader.com/232. And of course, if you think I can help you with a leadership challenge or a goal you want to reach, you can apply for a complimentary coaching session with me on the show notes page as well. I can't coach everyone, obviously, but if you don't get your application in, we'll never know. So get them in today. Thank you for listening once again. I really appreciate it, and good on you for taking the time to try to improve your leadership. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'll be back next week.